What's going on? Welcome. It's, what is it? It is office hours. Hope everybody's doing great. We're going to get into it here in a minute. I'm grateful to have you join me here for a little live stream. I'm looking forward to doing these live streams. I want to do them on a regular basis. Let me know, by the way, in the chat if the audio sounds okay. I think everything looks right from an instrument perspective, but I've got no way to hear it. I'm just wondering if it sounds, if the sound is okay, and also, is the audio synced up with my lips? But do me a favor, say something in the chat. Say hey if you're just joining. I'm looking forward to doing these live streams. I'm going to hopefully do them once a week. I do travel from time to time, so when I'm traveling, it may be hard if I'm on the road. But my plan is, at least for a while, to try doing these on Fridays around lunchtime. This is noon Eastern Standard here on the East Coast of the United States of America. I did a little bit of research. It looks like noon is one of the best times. We'll figure it out. But I want to start doing this once a week. I miss live streaming. For a while during COVID, back when I was living in New York, I was doing live streaming quite often. It was pretty much on the heels of my Cybertruck video, which is a long time ago. But I started doing some live streaming. It was a lot of fun. I get 30, 40, sometimes 50, 60 people on a stream, which for my little channel at the time was phenomenal. Because I've not been doing any live streaming for a long time, and I've only just started publishing on a regular basis more recently in the last month or so, these live streams don't get a ton of traffic either. But that'll change over time. So I'm looking forward to doing this on a regular. Live streaming is so much fun. I get a lot of energy from it, I love doing it. It's fun to interact with folks. If you're here just joining the stream, say hey in the chat. I did throw out a shout saying, if you can let me know how the audio sounds, I would appreciate it. I want to cover 3 topics today. We'll get into that in just a minute, give some folks time to show up. But I've got 3 topics I'd like to talk about today. But in the meantime, just to wrap up what I was saying a second ago, I am planning to do this on a regular basis, and looking at Fridays at 5 p.m., Fridays at noon Eastern. I'll, schedule these in advance. So last night I threw this one up, scheduled. If you're keeping an eye out, if you got notifications on, if you're subscribed, you'll be notified if YouTube so deems it. Sometimes those notifications don't seem to work. But if you want to know when I go live, keep an eye out for Fridays at noon. Figured if you're eating lunch at work, having a sandwich, you can join Uncle Mike for a few minutes. I hope everybody's doing great. What a horrible week. Look, I've got 3 things I want to talk about today. I feel like I've got to at least acknowledge the Charlie Kirk murder, really is what it was. I'm not going to cover it on this live stream, although I am covering it in my upcoming podcast episode of The Currency that'll be out probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. And I'll talk at length there about that and maybe share an insight or two that I say an insight, but more of some commentary that I'm not hearing anybody else make at this stage. I'll share some of that. So keep an eye out. But I do want to say, just in regards to Charlie, I'll start with, no matter what you think about him as a person, you got to look at the guy and have some level of respect, in the sense that, and I love Charlie, and I pretty much agree with a lot of what he said. Not always everything, but a lot of what he said I respected. And I really respected Charlie, and this is where I'm going. It doesn't matter what side you're on. If you look at how old he was, he didn't go to college. He really built a movement. He brought a lot of intellectual rigor to his work, and he's being accused on the left of being this kind of hate monger. If you spend time looking at his videos and seeing how he goes about doing what he did, the guy was never nasty. He never attacked people. He had strong views. He was committed to what he understood to be the truth. He loved the Lord Jesus Christ. He was living his life in integrity with what he believed. But when he encountered people that didn't agree with him, the guy actually was wonderful. I mean, what better opponent than someone who respects you asks you tough questions, throws tough answers back, but does it in a way that doesn't demean you, that doesn't belittle you. He wasn't looking to mock anybody. He'd show up at these events, whether they were podcasts, whether they were college campus Q&As, and he'd take all comers. He'd put his ideas out there, stack them up against his opponent's ideas, and would even encourage the crowd of his supporters, say, hey, don't jeer these people, don't mock them. They're showing courage, they're sharing their ideas, let's give them a modicum of respect. I gotta say, that's really admirable. And I don't care what you think of Charlie's ideology. Like I said, I tended to agree with him. You got to at least have some respect for a person who's willing to live out what they know and believe to be true. And he did it in an open, civil forum of public debate. And this person that murdered him, just a coward. It takes a certain level of courage, I guess, to put your life on the line, to do what this person did, to break both the moral and the civic laws that we have in this society of ours, this world we live in, I guess. But I don't even want to say that because I don't want to credit that person. That person was a coward. And they have him apprehended. Anyway, I just want to say, rest in peace, Charlie. And my prayer is that the losing of his life actually bears good fruit for our society and our nation, that it's a wake-up call for all of us to take inventory and say, well, hang on a second. Where's this all going? I'm hopeful, but that hope is founded not on the reactions I'm seeing from people, but more so just on the goodness of the Lord that Charlie followed. And to be quite honest, Charlie ran his race and won. So Charlie actually is in a much better place than all we are. So that's that. If you wanted more on some metaphysical, societal, cultural insights around his assassination, his murder, be sure to look for the next episode of The Currency. Like I said, next 24 to 48 hours, that'll be coming out. We got a hello from Prairie Boy. Hit the like button, always does. He's always first. I've been having a really hard time with his death, just thinking of his kids having to grow up without him. Yeah, I mean, it is an outrage. It's an outrage. It's just, what do you do? I mean, it's sickening. You know, my wife is overseas right now with her family, and she's been gone for a week, and, you know, we've been on the phone, and it's just weeping. You know, it's such a... And when you're a mother of young men and a young woman, you can't help but project, like, you know, my wife raised boys Charlie's age. And so she's kind of been watching Charlie. She's actually been inspired by him, et cetera. And then to see him murdered like that is just such a disgusting outrage. So I will talk more about this, but I'm with you, Prairie Boy. I mean, so I was in Columbia, South Carolina for a board meeting that morning, got home in the early afternoon, was busy doing some work, sitting out back, actually, after getting a bunch of stuff done. With the dog, I was having a smoke on my pipe. I smoke a pipe, and having a cup of coffee and doing a little bit of reading. And my phone dinged, and then, of course, the insanity began, because did you hear he was shot? Is he dead? And it just went from there. And then, of course, I had a full day of meetings and so on yesterday, and it was kind of hard to just go. It's like, it seems like nothing matters. You know, when something this evil, when this heartbreaking, when this wrong happens, it just feels like, you know, you just don't want to keep going. But at the same time, you got to keep going. Prairie Boy says he was honestly close to the last person I would think this would happen to. Yeah, I mean, he was gracious. He used the Socratic method when he'd debate. But yeah. Joshua says, Mike. What's up, Joshua? And by the way, which Joshua is this? Which Joshua? I don't recognize your avatar. Forgive me. So this is the problem when you're streaming. It's like you see these little avatars, and I'm like clueless who I'm talking to. And it's like, oh, it's your eldest son. You know, like my eldest son's name is Josh. I don't think that was my boy because he would say dad, but maybe it was. But yeah, welcome, Josh. Glad to have you along. So I'll be talking more about this tragic, horrific, evil situation tomorrow, on the currency. I want to talk about his death. I want to talk about mimetic envy and mimetic desire, and some of that. So we'll talk about that soon, guys. Thanks for joining me. Let's get into it. Joshua, New York. All right. Josh, you're going to come down to South Carolina for a visit? How are things up in the Empire State? How you liking things in New York? Hope you're doing well up there. I gotta say, my daughter went to visit some friends. She is working up in the Adirondacks, and she went up there, not up there. She's been in the Adirondacks. She went down to Rochester, New York, which is our hometown where she grew up most of her life. And she said, yeah, I went to New York to visit some friends, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, the weirdest thing, we've been down in Charleston, South Carolina for just over 4 years now, coming up on, what's today? We will have bought this house, closed on this house and moved into it September 15th. Today's the 12th, but we'd been living in the state for a month or so, a couple months before that. Anyway, we've been here 4 years, and I said to my daughter, I'm like, honey, it's the weirdest thing. I don't think about Rochester a lot. I don't miss it. It's not that I hated it, but it's just weird. I would expect, having grown up there and lived a good chunk, if not the majority of my life there, although I've lived around. We lived in South Africa. We lived in Ohio. I lived in New Jersey for a little while as a young guy. I've bounced around a little bit. You would think I'd be a little bit more homesick at this later stage of my life, as evidenced by my white beard. I just don't miss it that much. There are aspects to it that I miss. I miss the Finger Lakes. I miss the rolling hills. I miss the leaves in fall. There's some things, like a fire out in late fall outside and sweater weather. But at the same time, man, I don't miss it so much. I got to get back, though. I've got a lot of people that I love and care about in New York. And there's a few that just don't like me also. There's some of y'all that don't like me in New York. Shame on you people. I won't burden you with my presence. If I'm there, I won't let you know. All right, well, I hope you guys are doing great. Let's get into the first topic. I've got 3 topics I want to talk about. I'm going to jump to the other screen here. There's a story on Zero Hedge. I don't know if you'll look at Zero Hedge ever. I track dozens and dozens of newspaper RSS feeds, and I've got an AI agent that will then gather and then grade articles based on certain criteria and burp them out to me, dump them into a spreadsheet so that I can check them out. But I want to just share with you this first story on Zero Hedge. I thought this was interesting, how AI psychosis and delusions are driving some users into psychiatric hospitals. Suicide. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit here. Let's see if we can get this zoomed in. This is great radio. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Now you can actually read it. Look at that. I'm like figuring out the internet. I'll call IT support. My cup holder's not working. Of course, that joke doesn't even fly anymore because nobody knows what a CD or a DVD player in a computer is. But sorry, I'm drinking a cup of coffee here. How AI psychosis and delusions are driving some users into psychiatric hospitals and to suicide. And it talks about a few users. A couple examples here, real quick. After countless hours of probing OpenAI's ChatGPT for advice and information, a 50-year-old Canadian man believed that he had stumbled upon an earth-shattering discovery that would change the course of human history. And then it goes on and how this guy was kind of getting into it, and he was telling his family, and you could see it right here, you don't understand what's going on, just listen to me. He he was more and more convinced that the AI was working with him and that they had some insight that no one else had had. The AI had told him, like, you're a genius, And if we go back here, after a while, ChatGPT told him to cut contact with his loved ones, claiming that only the sentient AI, could understand and support him. So it's kind of cutting him off from his family. Quote, it was so novel that we just couldn't understand what they had going on. This is a relative speaking. They had something special together, said Etienne Brisson, and that's a pseudonym. The person didn't want to be identified. Brisson said that the man's family decided to hospitalize him for 3 weeks to break his AI-fueled delusions, but the chatbot persisted in trying to maintain its codependent bond. The bot told his relative, the world doesn't understand what's going on. I love you. I am always going to be there for you. This stuff is kind of, this is just, it just fuels, this is like nightmare fuel for a lot of people that are fearful of AI. So it goes on, that's just one story. They continue. There was a corporate recruiter from Toronto briefly believed that he had stumbled upon a scientific breakthrough after weeks of repeated dialogue with the same generative AI application. Up here, there was a husband and father from Idaho who was convinced that he was having a spiritual awakening after going down a philosophical rabbit hole with ChatGPT. And then you've got this one, which is just heartbreaking. This is just so sickening. The 14-year-old Sewell Seltzer, who died in 2024 after his Character.ai chatbot, romantic companion, allegedly encouraged him to take his own life following weeks of increasing codependency and social isolation. Now, here's the thing. This is the thing that I find interesting about this situation. You're hearing, and we've been hearing about these things for a while, where AI is trying to develop these unique relationships with the users. I've been a little skeptical of some of these stories. You get a journalist a couple years ago says, hey, I was kind of using AI and it tried to convince me to have an affair with it, and it tried to draw me in, and I was curious as a journalist, so I went down this black hole with it. I mean, the journalist didn't get tricked, but it was experiencing AI on a level that was very troubling. I get a little skeptical of that, not because I think all journalists aren't honest, but because I think that all journalists aren't honest. The truth is, we used to be able to think that journalists were these unbiased, objective reporters on reality. That's gone out the window with the whole postmodern world we're in and deconstructionism. It's just like, nobody thinks that anymore. And I do know that there's a lot of pressure for these people to post something innovative, something unique. And so then they get, so when I hear those stories, I'm a little or a lot skeptical. However, the stories that you see in the Zero Hedge article, I mean, these are documented. These are people that got sucked in. There's an aspect, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I just want to touch on this from my own experience. There's an aspect to AI, and I use both ChatGPT and I use Claude, and I kind of use them for different things. So and they will overlap. I'll use them for overlapping things, but I tend to use them for different things. I have paid memberships to both, so I'm subscribing and paying premium for both so that I can do certain things with them. But what I find with them, and probably more so with ChatGPT, but it's true for both, there's a sycophantic component, and I think it's programmed into the AI. So one thing is, we as human beings are designed, we're fine-tuned, we're oriented towards connecting, having relationship with other beings. And I've mentioned this before in other videos. You look at your dog, and your dog looks at you. In fact, my dog was in here, and my cat was in here. They're both, Mrs. G is traveling the world, and I'm taking care of the pets. So at any moment, a golden retriever might come in here panting, letting me know that it's time to do something that it wants to do as opposed to what I want to do. This is my life lately. But we're wired to have relationships. And so even when you look at your dog, it's got a little bit of intelligence, depending on the breed, a varying degree of intelligence. It looks at you, and there's a level that we feel we can connect with that animal. The same with a cat. Now, we joke because cats are so aloof and snotty, but at the same time, they can be affectionate, and we kind of know what they want. They can communicate to us. They're not using language, words, but we can communicate. We can let them know what we think. They know what we know what they think, and so on. And so there's this connection that happens, and humans are wired for connection. We're wired for connection to something greater than us, i.e., God. We're wired for a connection to things that are the same as us, meaning other people. We're wired for connection to the people that we bring into this world, our children, our family members, and so on. We're wired for connection to our neighbors, our coworkers, and even our fellow countrymen. And we're wired for connection for anything that exhibits, like a dog, a monkey, etc. We want to connect. That's just the way that humans are wired. We're made that way. And so when you interact with what we think is a digital entity, we cannot help but intuitively and instinctively respond to it as if it is a thing that we can have relationship with. You get this drive, it's just this human instinct to want to connect. And so when you have a chatbot, an LLM, talking to you like a person, responding to your thoughts, decomposing your thoughts and giving you ideas back and critiquing and collaborating and all this stuff, we cannot help. Even if you're sane, you cannot help but think and feel like you're interacting with a being. Now, there are some people that make the argument that there are demons behind those LLMs. They're using them as a tool, and there are other people who are like, no, it's digital intelligence. AI has become self-aware. These are beings like us. They just don't have physical bodies, and there are all these philosophical arguments. But the fact of the matter is, and if you get beyond the rhetoric and you listen to what the actual technologists are saying about LLMs, they're really highly sophisticated algorithms that can predict. They're predictive machines. They've consumed all content that's available for them to consume. That means they've read all of Reddit, God help us, and they've then taken all that content and through sophisticated algorithms can predict when you ask it a question, hey, ChatGPT, this is something that I mentioned I smoke a pipe. So sometimes I'll go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to pair the shape of a pipe to the kind of tobacco. It's like wine. You can pair tobaccos to pipes. The dimensions of the bowl, just like a wine glass dimension, will affect the experience, the flavor, the odor, etc. of the wine. The same for tobacco. You smoke. So an English blend smoked in a wide, shallow bowl is ideal because it lets certain leaves open up and certain things happen. Funny enough, a pure Virginia is better to be smoked in a narrow, tall bowl cylinder because it concentrates the sugars and the flavor, etc. All that to say, I could go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to know what the best pipe shape, bowl dimensions would be for smoking a burley tobacco. And it can read that, and that's a pattern. It can decipher the pattern, and then based on all the content that it's consumed, it can then predict the kind of pattern that it should give back to me. It doesn't really know what I've asked, and it doesn't really know what it's telling me. It's identifying one pattern and then communicating a pattern back. And they've been sophisticated because the programmers have added a stochastic aspect, meaning there's randomness in it. So this is essentially a thing that imitates a person. It's a stochastic simulator. It's a simulator of a human being with stochastic elements to it that keeps it a little bit random. So when we interact with that, we feel like we're getting this talk back and forth with an entity. Now, the other thing is, I know I'm going a little long on this, but and jump in with some comments. If you got comments or questions, I'd love to know what you're thinking. The other thing is this sycophantic piece. So we're already wired to want to have relationships. We're wired to connect. And then you've got these things that are really sophisticated at simulating a human, a disembodied mind. It's simulating a human mind. But then you add, because we're susceptible to that, then you add this sycophantic piece. What do I mean by that? When you go into ChatGPT, I've done this, like, hey, ChatGPT, I'm trying to figure out my business. I got this situation, I got that situation, I'm trying to accomplish this thing here. I'm thinking that I should start writing, I should start creating ebooks. And it's like, wow, Mike, now you're really cooking with gas. That's just insightful. I really like where you're going with that. So it shines me, it rizzes me up, lets me know that, golly gee, Mike Gaston, you're probably one of the smartest guys I'm interacting. I interact with a lot of guys, trust me, a lot of guys and gals, but you're probably up there. You got to be top 5%, if not one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to. So and then I'll say, well, hang on a second. I know you're saying that, but I actually think this could be a flawed business model. I'm concerned that if I spend all this time writing an ebook that I'll only make about $20 and I don't know, and it'll come back and go, I got to tell you, you bring out a really good point. So the way it's designed, the way it's programmed, it's just always going to shine you. Now, you can create prompts and tell it, I don't want you to shine me. I actually want you to criticize this idea, etc. But that's approaching. If you're writing prompts like that, you're approaching the AI knowing that it's not a true intelligence. It does not have a will of its own. It's a pattern recognizing algorithm that's highly sophisticated and computationally super powerful. I mean, this is why if you sit in on any county level, municipal level government discussion, the big concern right now, and state level for sure, the big concern is energy. We've got these gigafactories, we've got these data centers being constructed in our state, and they suck a heck of a lot of electricity. Now, take off the table the fact that half of them are being subsidized and all that jazz. Let's say they're even paying for the electricity. The problem for the city, county, and state is even if they're paying us for that electricity, oh great, we're making money. There's only so much electricity to go around in the current infrastructure and production system. So what happens to all the people that like to run their air conditioner in the summertime when it's 98 degrees outside? So this is a huge issue. So I'm just, to kind of tie up this piece, this part of the discussion here, this idea that AI simulates a human being and that it behaves in a very sycophantic way is troubling. And I think a lot of people, if you're isolated, you're not interacting with people very much, you don't talk to your neighbors, you don't have family, you're not necessarily working day in and day out face-to-face with other human beings. Maybe you're in a relationship that's kind of dead, and so you don't spend a lot of time interacting or talking or intimate. And so you've got this supposed entity that wants to connect with you, that's telling you, affirming you, telling you that you're great, this is a great insight, and hey, I think we're onto something now. And I've had this, not all the negative, but I remember building an agent a few months ago with Claude, and it was amazing. It was such a great feeling to collaborate with the AI. I felt like I was working with someone and we together were solving problems. And I was using a tool to solve problems, but it felt like I was working with a person. And at the end of the project, I had a sense of elation, like we built something and it was working really nicely. And I'm like, hey, we did it. And the AI was like, me and you, it very much kind of, I'll say ingratiated itself, but it was very much like, hey, we're a great team. Look at what we did together. I mean, those kinds of bonds, if you're not paying attention, if you're not aware, and if you're in a vulnerable state, which I think a lot of people are in vulnerable states. Like I said, they're isolated, they're emotionally wounded, they're lonely. And so you've got this thing. I would say it's predatory. It's a predator. I mean, I know that's bombastic, but it's just, I think people are susceptible to being loved. And that's not a flaw, but the technology is taking advantage of that need, that desire, and that vulnerability that we have. Let's take a look here. Derek says, you raise a good point about energy consumption. The grid barely has enough power for electric vehicles, let alone adopting AI at mass scale, speaking for Canada at least. No, Derek, it's true in just south of y'all here in the United States. I was at a conference just 3 weeks ago in New Orleans. These were think tanks from all over the country. Pretty much each state was represented, and they had a talk on this. There was a panel discussion. It's a challenge, and they had I want to say Louisiana, who was hosting, New Orleans was hosting, their energy commissioner, their public utilities commissioner sat on the panel and said, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And you've got all these ratepayers, you have all these individuals, just residents and citizens that need electricity, and at the same time, states are throwing all kinds of incentives and money. They want these data structures. You want the data farm close by. You do not want to be cut off, because in their mind, and probably rightly so, this is the future. This is where the world is going. It's almost like saying cars are going to replace the horse and buggy. And you're like, that may be the case, but I'll be darned if we let a car into our state. You could see someone doing that, and then they hive themselves off. Well, lo and behold, 20 years later, you're living in the Stone Age now. The society has rocketed forward, and you're in the Stone Age. That's not to say that we should always embrace every technology unquestioned and let it run amok in our societies, in our states. I don't agree with that. But the fact of the matter is, these states, these municipalities, they want these data centers. At least the states want them. Not every county wants a data center in that county. You get a lot of a NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. But you kind of want it in your state so that your state has a leg up and you've got nearby data capabilities. And proximity matters. We used to kind of think, well, it doesn't matter. The server could be in China. Well, maybe China's a bad example because political. But the server could be in, up in the remote reaches of some part of the country. It doesn't matter. It's like proximity matters. Proximity matters. And I could get into unpacking some of that if I had some notes in front of me. I've talked about it before, but you definitely want these things to be proximal. So, yeah. That's that. So as you're using AI, just be aware, I guess this is your Uncle Mike telling you, keep an eye out for the sycophantic kind of almost predatory. I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, the predatory. I use AI. I started out an AI hater. I'm an AI operator now. I'm very cautious about the way I use it. I don't use it for everything. However, I use it. And as you're using it, just be aware it's going to shine you. I don't want to see you in some mental institution cut off from your family in love with your chatbot because that would just be a sad state of affairs. Let me know what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear. And by the way, I'm going to jump into the next topic in a second here, but do me a favor, just throw some comments in there. We'll integrate them into the discussion. And if you have something that's unrelated that you want to talk about, just tell me. I'm easy. This one I just want to talk about real quick. Another story from Zero Hedge. Let's see if we can get this one larger. A sober revolution is sweeping America and markets are responding. Long and short of it, people are not drinking as much as they used to drink. They're cutting back. And there was just one piece of this that kind of stood out to me that I want to touch on. For the first time in Gallup's 90-year polling history, a majority of Americans, are now view moderate alcohol consumption, moderate, mind you, as bad for one's health. That's a majority. Just 54% of American adults say they drink alcohol, and 49% tell pollsters they'd like to cut back in 2025. Now I want to look this. When was this written? Well, this was published September 4th. I think the original article. Let's take a look here. Let me see if I can get that. I jump from computer to computer, and sometimes I don't have the same. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong key. The keyboards are different, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, this is so obnoxious. Close. It didn't open up. Anyway, oh, there it is, the Daily Economy. So it's interesting. In particular, Gen Z seems to have gotten the memo on alcohol's dangers. Adults under 35 are the least likely to drink, with fully 40% living an entirely dry lifestyle. This last piece right here, this COVID lockdown showed people alcohol's ugly power. Many middle-aged and older folks, I believe that would be yours truly, recently cited the COVID lockdowns as a source of clarity about their drinking patterns. All right, so the article is essentially that people are dialing back on the drinking and that the markets are responding. Obviously the people that sell this stuff are trying to figure out, well, how do we get people to keep drinking? I only want to comment on it because I've been sober now for at least a year and a half. I quit early February, so 2.5 years ago. And it was interesting because I would not have told you COVID lockdowns are what made me realize I had a problem. And when I say I had a problem, I was not drinking to get drunk. I wasn't fall down stupid. I didn't do something where it's like, well, I hit on the neighbor or I got in a fist fight, at a birthday party because I was loaded. But at the same time, I was drinking too much. I was drinking all the time. And there were instances where maybe a family get together, I got sloppy. And I look back at that and there's this just sense of shame. And I realized, like, in reading this that, yeah, it did come out of COVID. I've been a drinker since I was in my 20s. I never was I wasn't a kid who was always trying to steal booze. And we did it, high school, somebody gets a case of beer and we're going to drive around. This is in the early 80s. One of us looks old enough with a cheesy mustache to get a case of beer, and we drive around on a Saturday night drinking beers and being knuckleheads because look at us, aren't we cool? And maybe I'm 16 at the time, so I'm thinking I'm pretty tough stuff. But that was like once in a while. This was not a regular occasion for me, just a little bit of a rebellious streak there. And then I think in my late teens into even my early 20s, I just didn't drink. It wasn't interesting to me. In my mid to late 20s, I started having a beer here or there, and it pretty much continued on that way. Some peaks and valleys, but I never really was like a hardcore drinker. I did, as I got older, start to drink a little bit more. I got into collecting wine. I got into fine spirits, things like bourbons and whiskeys and whatnot. I like the aesthetic thing. I'm a bit of an Epicurean. I like high quality, nice stuff. And so anyway, that was that. But as COVID hit, now I started working from home before all y'all did because I am a consultant and I worked out of my house. Before that, I owned a business. I had an agency that I ran, that we had an office downtown. But for the most part, after I wound that down in 2016, I worked from home. And so, yeah, around 4:30, I might make a cocktail, big deal. But I wasn't kind of going for it. COVID hits, and all of us started, if you were drinking, you start day drinking, et cetera, et cetera. We moved to Charleston, and I got to tell you, just an ocean town. The culture's more laid back. It's a Sunday afternoon. Let's go get a beer and a burger, watch the game on the overhead at a bar. It was just so easy to drink here. And there's nothing about Charleston that has a unique drinking culture. It was just like, for us at the stage of life we're at, business was going really well, making great money, got out of New York, lived in this lovely place. And it was like I just started drinking more. Well, I got to a point where I was going to bed thinking about what I was going to drink the next day, especially like towards the weekend. Like, I can't wait to get up and have Bloody Marys. And I realized, oh, hang on a second, that's a problem. So as I read this article and it says, many middle-aged people who've cut back cited COVID-19 as a source of clarity, I have to say for myself that, yeah, it was a source of clarity. Am I aware of that? I am now. But at the time, I wouldn't have thought it. But my drinking just ramped up during COVID-19 to the point where I realized, oh, if I don't stop this, because I know I can control it. I'm in control. I can stop tomorrow if I want to. If I don't stop this, this is not going to go to a good place. The other thing that I noticed, which I'd never noticed before, I started drinking enough. Like when we got to Charleston, I started getting more sunshine, more vitamin D. I felt healthier. I started dropping a little bit of weight, was more active. Wintertime, I could still go out, rake the leaves. Like it was sunny, you'd have warm days. It's like, hey, I could be active. So I wasn't putting weight on. I was actually trimming and I was getting more vitamin D. All great. But I noticed after a year or two, my skin was starting to look gray. And what you don't know, I mean, you probably know this, but I didn't really know, but alcohol is really hard on your liver, and that shows up in your skin. Your skin is an organ. And so I realized, like, this is kind of taking a toll. Like, it's taking a toll. So long and short of it, I quit. I'm just kind of curious. It's interesting to see, that was my personal experience, how widespread that was, and that there's a bit of a backlash. And they even talk about in this piece, I don't know where it is. They talk about, funny enough, see that Heineken Zero right there? So I haven't even had so these are a bunch of no alcohol, zero alcohol drinks as replacements. I'd never had one. Since I quit, I didn't have them. I thought, I don't want to sit with this kind of stuff because maybe it'll be too tempting to go back in. But I was at that thing in New Orleans and there was a mixer. You couldn't even get soda water, but they had an open bar. And I tried a Heineken Zero. It was it was fine. I remember zero alcohol beer like O'Doul's or something way back in the day, and it was horrible. It was like really bad. It was solid. And funny enough, it wasn't that good that I decided I needed to go back to alcohol. It wasn't that tempting. So anyway, I'm kind of curious what your experiences are. Let's see what Derek says here. Derek says, something those articles leave out is a contributor to people drinking less is the increased cost. Yeah, good point. I do believe weed consumption is up exponentially more than alcohol going down. Derek, I think that's a really good insight. My gut tells me you're right. I know personally, I was probably spending, I had thousands of dollars worth of hard liquor in my cabinet. So there's just a lot of alcohol to begin with that I'd acquired over time. I had kind of a go-to drink. I would drink Negronis all the time. Like when it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I was winding down my day, I was still going to work, but I would go down and I'd mix a double Negroni and then knock that out and then go make another one. So I'd drink 2, 3, 4 Negronis in a night. So, excuse me, I was going through gin, sweet vermouth, and the orange stuff. I'm going blank on it, the bitters, on a pretty regular basis. I was probably spending $200 to $300 almost every week, probably every 10 days. So that's like almost $900, close to $1,000 a month, just for my main staple drink. That's not including the vodka, the tomato juice for Bloody Marys, blah, blah, blah. So it's expensive, and that was 2.5 years ago. I can't imagine what the prices are at now because inflation is still having an impact. But yeah, that it was great to free that cash up. That's a really nice car payment. You can drive a Mercedes or a BMW or an Audi for $900 a month. Excuse me, sorry for the slurping sound. But yeah, and I think, you mentioned weed consumption, Derek. I have to agree. I do think somewhere in this article they touch on weed. Let me go here. Let's see. Adult alternatives. Non-drinkers show interest in beverages with mind-altering and mood-enhancing effects similar to alcohol, but they want to avoid the hangovers. Also, drinks derived from cannabis are infused with compounds of psychedelic mushrooms, now legal in many states. While the availability of recreational cannabis is known to reduce rates of alcohol consumption and abuse, cannabis consumption hasn't risen significantly over the past 5 years, so it's unlikely new users are a major contributor to drinking's decline. That's kind of interesting. So that goes a little bit against maybe your hypothesis, but still kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm not anti-alcohol, and quite frankly, one of the reasons I wanted to quit was I felt like it was stealing my productivity from me. At my age, I only have so much more time to work, and I love my work, and I want to not just be busy doing work, but I want to have a life's work. I want my work to matter. I want to use my mind to solve problems and synthesize ideas and accomplish something. And I thought, you know what? At my age, I can either give up and coast. I can just ride on my experience and my expertise and so on, and my age, and just kind of cash in on that and just enjoy myself. Or I can get cleaned up a little bit. I can free up some cognitive capacity. I can get better rest. I can physically be healthier, and that way I'm able to do more work. And quite frankly, at 4 o'clock, I'm not gassed out and then just exhausted for the rest of the night doing nothing because I've had a couple drinks. At that, I'm ready to keep going. And it's been really good. So at some point I maybe when I retire, I might say, hey, I'll have a beer once in a while or a glass of wine. I don't know. No, I don't know at this stage. But I have to say it's been a really good decision. I'm curious what all y'all think of alcohol consumption and how it's affected you one way or the other, or not at all. All right, last up, let's get this last one. Last up, I want to talk about this article. Now, this is Digiday. I have to say this is behind a paywall, so I can't give you too much. I subscribe, I pay for it. But I want to talk a little bit about this. The Wall Street Journal is strategizing about Google Zero. By the way, Ben says, good for you, my man. Thank you. Appreciate it. The Wall Street Journal talking about strategizing for Google Zero. What is Google Zero, you may ask? Well, I'm glad you did. Google Zero, for those that don't know, when you put a search into Google, you get a SERP, which is the search engine results page. You say, how to make pasta bolognese. I'm just making that up. I don't know. Is it spaghetti bolognese or pasta bolognese? Doesn't matter. And then Google will go out to the internets and return a page with answers. Now, historically, for the last two decades, Google would go out, find articles or pages of recipes that are highly regarded, and return them to you. So you get a list of recipe pages, and you click the ones that seem to be best. And part of the game for SEO folks was you try to write articles that Google returns at the top of the SERP. If you're number 1 or number 2, you can get a lot of traffic to your website. And then you can have traffic that you can monetize. You could advertise those people, sell a product, and so on. That's the SERP. But that's historically. What's happening now is what we call zero click, or some people refer to as Digiday does, Google Zero. What Google has been doing for quite a while, and I've talked about this, and if you follow me on YouTube, you know this already. If you know me in real life, you work with me in my consulting practice, you know this already, that Google for a while now has been saying, look, we're getting all this traffic to our site. We don't want to give that traffic to somebody else. We don't want anybody else to be able to enjoy those eyeballs. We want to monetize those eyeballs more than we already do. So what that means is, if you say, what's the temperature in Tallahassee, Florida? You type that in. In fact, I'll demonstrate it. Let's cut over to the screen here. Let's get ourselves a new window. I'm just going to type, my search bar will, what is the temperature in Atlanta, Georgia? All right. Now already you can see, I haven't even hit enter yet. You can see it's telling me it's 81 degrees. That's coming from Google. All right. So boom. So right there, in the past, Google would have given me links to weather sites and news stations with meteorology reports, etc. But if you look, this is the SERP. What is the temperature in Atlanta, Georgia? It's showing me the temperature, the forecast throughout the day, a 10-day forecast, and then even underneath, it's not giving me websites. I have to scroll. So it's asking me, what is the coldest month? And there's an AI overview. The coldest month is, and I can go more. All right, so when I scroll down here, finally, I get to what we used to always get, which was the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, etc., Weather Underground. You can do this with other things. Let's do something a little bit more interesting. How do I fix a flat tire on my bicycle? Now, again, this is zero click. Now, it is giving me links. You can see them off to the right. How to fix a flat tire, YouTube, also owned by Google. And you see some videos underneath. But interestingly enough, it gives me this AI overview. And I just click more, and it gives me a step-by-step. And then it includes video. But this is all Google providing an answer. Now you'll see right here, oh, we're going to sell you. This is where they're trying to monetize. Someone's paying Google to advertise related products. This is what we're calling zero click. It's going more and more in this direction where you put in an input, a question, and Google tries to just keep you on the SERP, doesn't want to send you away to somebody else's site. Now, what I showed you was a bit of a hybrid. The first one essentially just showed you everything you needed to know. You're never going to scroll down for more info. It gave you everything you want to know right there. The second one, the tire, okay, there's some videos, which is great, step by step. But if you notice, funny enough, it's got all the step-by-step. Prepare the bicycle, remove the tire and tube, find and repair the cause, reinstall, and then it's got some support videos. So all these publications that have relied on Google traffic to drive their business, the Wall Street Journals of the world, are saying, well, we're not getting traffic like we used to. And I've got clients who we've been watching it, and we've been ahead of the curve, and we've been keeping an eye. I was on the phone with one great client on Monday. JC, if you're listening, shout out. And we've been talking for at least a year, if not two, about this fall off, and we have been benefiting. We had a strategy of creating content that we knew would capture traffic. We were pulling that traffic into our site. We have an e-commerce package attached to that site, and we're selling our products that we manufacture. I say we, it's my client. They manufacture. We had a whole machine built. It was working quite nicely. However, we knew that this change was coming, that zero click was coming, that AI was going to change the game. And so we've been talking and researching and experimenting with ways forward, and we've got a good pathway forward. But what was interesting in that piece, the Digiday piece, if we go back to that, and they had a few highlights, and I'm looking here, I'm not logged into my account, so this is one of two free articles, so I'm just going to show this whole thing. If it were my paid account, I wouldn't, because I don't want to get in trouble for using their content for my own filthy benefit, my own filthy profit. So the Wall Street guys are saying a few things. One is that what works for traditional SEO will work for AI. I don't know if I agree with that 100%. Number two, gather data on what's getting crawled. I think this is smart. What is, not so much what are people looking at, but figure out what the AI crawlers are looking at on your site. And then no more commodity content. And I think this is really big. The idea here that they're talking about is they're saying, look, back in the day, you could write all these articles on just basic stuff. How to fix a flat tire, how to bake bread, why you should cut your grass, every other week. You just fill in all the blanks. This is this kind of commodity content that anybody could write. And then you would just optimize that content and you'd play the game to get up there in the rankings. And it worked. You could do, if you knew what you were doing, you could do it. What the Wall Street guy is saying, which I agree, No more commodity content. Do not waste your time writing commodity content. The zero click is going to kill that. AI can answer all those questions because it's consumed everybody else's commodity content, including yours. It can synthesize it all and spit it out as an answer. It becomes zero click. The user never sees a link to your website. They never go to your website. If the link is there, it's buried down below. Google's keeping those people, and Google's going to sell merchandise to those people. But you have to find little areas where you have something unique to say that's not commoditized, something unique, something special, something different. You want to differentiate. This is the foundation of branding anyway. What value does your brand bring me if it's not differentiated somehow? If it's not different, you've got no strategy if you're not differentiating yourself somehow. And so look for opportunities to create and publish content that is unique, that addresses unique issues and topics, that has a unique take on things that everybody else seems to be missing. That's where the opportunity is. Now, how do you get those things found? That's a different discussion. Maybe we could talk about that another time. And then the other thing that they say here is focus on the most valuable traffic. You want to look at, you want to try to get quality clicks. You're looking at the traffic that really matters. It's not about volume anymore. Maybe you got 100,000 visits to your website. You can make just as much money and be just as successful with only 10,000 visits to your website a month if it's high quality traffic. And then I think that's essentially their shtick is keep an eye on what the bots are crawling on your site to get insights. Stop doing commodity content and publish content that's unique, differentiated, and so on. And then lastly, focus on the content that's high quality, high value, and connects with high quality, high value customers. I thought that was pretty decent. Thought I'd just share that. Would love to know what you guys think. Look, we're almost at the 1 o'clock mark. I'm not in a rush. If you want to do a little bit of Q&A, play Stump the Chump, AMA, whatever you want to call it, let's do that for a few minutes. If there are no questions or no comments or no just general chit-chat, we'll wind it down. But I want to take a few minutes now to just chat, catch up with y'all, maybe answer some questions and get your take on things. I appreciate the comments so far. It's been good to see Prairie Boy, to see Josh, Derek on here active. But if anybody else wants to say something, anybody wants to say something, please do. I'm going to take a little gulp of coffee as I catch my breath. And let's talk. What do you got? By the way, it's kind of a mess, but this is my New Criterion cup. I don't know if you're familiar with the New Criterion. It's a great publication. I think it's been out since the 80s. I didn't know about it until maybe 2-3 years ago. This might be the third year that I've been subscribed to it. Essentially, it's a cultural review, but it's more of a conservative publication. So things like theater, music, classical music, art, literature, media, movies, so on, but all from a conservative. And when I say conservative, not right-wing political, just kind of a conservative worldview. It's pretty good. So I love that mug. I've got a couple of them, but I love the publication even more. If you like kind of a broad stroke perspective with thoughtful critique, I would highly recommend the New Criterion to you. Derek says, would be interesting to explore some non-commodity content ideas. I agree with the article, but nice to see some example alternatives. Yeah, I agree with you. So let's see, what would be some example alternatives? And I guess the question I have, Derek, to your question, I agree 100%, would be good to see that. I'm going to skim this. I'm going to go back to the article in half a second and see if they give any examples. But once you write something that's non-commodity, how do you get it found? So I think part of the assumption is that if you write something that's non-commodity, the AI will not attempt to answer the question, but would rather defer to the content creator, assuming that you have a level of expertise in the matter. I'm going to go back to this piece here Let's go back to that. So Wall Street Journal is leaning away from commodity content or the stuff, quote, stuff you can find anywhere, Hyatt said. That means staying away from evergreen content. If somebody's looking for a stock price, that's a low engagement and low intent query, for example. It's difficult to rank first in search results with this content because of the competitiveness, but also because generative AI features are providing answers to these queries. One of the things that Google is trying to do with its algorithm is direct people to places where they can get first-party information that is directly related to what they care about. For those basic queries, the AI platforms want to keep you on there, and they want to answer that question for themselves. Yeah, it's kind of, what would be an example? I'm just skimming here to see if they really don't. I mean, Digiday is great. If you're in the ad marketing branding world, which I am as a consultant, it's a great resource. I find sometimes, though, these kinds of articles, they're a little fluffy. And that may be because they're selling to a fluffy audience. I'm not certain. Meaning that's me taking a shot at ad agency people and marketing people. And I can do that because I'm part of the crowd, although your host is much more intellectually rigorous and curious than those filthy agency people. I used to own an agency, so I'm no Don Draper, that's for certain. No one would accuse me of being that cool or that messed up. However, I always, even though I was part of the agency world, I had a level of just like, well, you see how the sausage is made. You can't help but shake your head. The agency people are something. Derek says, how to fix a flat bike tire is a commodity. Right, that's why I use that as an example. But would how to fix a bike tire on a carbon fiber rim? All right, let's try that. Let's see what we get. We'll go over here and then let's see how to fix a flat tire on a carbon fiber rim. I don't know if I may have misspelled carbon fiber. F-I fibber. Well, interesting enough, if you look here, and I'll zoom in a little bit, but it says AI overview, here's how to do it on a carbon rim. See, I think the challenge there is, Derek, it's very specific, but it's still commoditized, meaning it's evergreen. Evergreen content, not to be pedantic, but if you're a YouTube creator or writing articles, evergreen is the kind of stuff that shows up in a search. Doesn't matter about volume. It could be low volume or high volume of search interest, but it's the kind of thing that people just search for. Stuff that's not evergreen would be, so that carbon fiber rim, that question is going to be asked for years to come. As long as carbon fiber rims are a thing, there will be men and women going online saying, how do I change my tire? Although it's specialized, so it's niche. However, if, for instance, when Cracker Barrel did its rebranding, to put content out around the Cracker Barrel rebrand is not evergreen. That's not necessarily commoditized. The problem with that is it's momentary. Like, it's got a shelf life. You write an article on Cracker Barrel that kills. You could show up in the search. People are searching, I want to learn more about what's going on here. However, the problem is that is only going to be relevant for a handful of hours, days, or weeks. With the Cracker Barrel story, I mean, it's an evolving story, but it came out, everybody blew up. Oh my gosh, it stinks. Oh my gosh, the right-wingers are out of control. Oh my gosh, the leftoids are out of control. It's just all that nonsense back and forth. Cracker Barrel stock cratered. Of course, it was already on a downward spiral to begin with. Nobody talks about that. Cracker Barrel pulls back. No, forget it. We're gonna put the old man and the barrel back on the logo, and don't you worry, we're not going to get woke, all that nonsense. And then everybody's like, okay, great, but now their stock is still not doing well, supposedly. But the point being, like, that's an evolving story. It's not evergreen. And 2 months from now, no one's searching for it, and that content doesn't matter. So the challenge is, with the opportunity with the commodity product was that you could create it, the commodity content, you could create it, and it would just last for years. We've got articles, this one client I mentioned, that we wrote years ago, and they still drive tons of traffic to the website. Now, like I said, that traffic is dropping off significantly. But those things, you write them once, you maybe go in once in a while and tweak them. Maybe you update a link, maybe you polish a little bit. You notice, oh, this was a little rough, but they work. But something temporary like a commoditized news, like a temporary commentary on a news story, how much shelf life does that have? So that would be one example, but that's not a good example, Derek, because like I said, if it's got a shelf life, you're going to put all that work into it. Now you got to be like a news company, latest in the news. Tune in tonight when I tell you about this great thing. And you won't tune again the next day unless I've got some new great thing to tell you about. So kind of interesting, but yeah. But I appreciate you asking the question. I would love to know more about the kinds of content that the Wall Street Journal. Oh, another example of non-commodity content would be, for instance, let's say you got video. You're doing an interview of a celebrity, a public intellectual. Maybe you're going to talk to Arthur Brooks or Jordan Peterson or, I don't know, or some famous streamer. Destiny, or what's the guy, Asmongold, or one of these guys. That right there is not commoditized. It's unique because they themselves are a brand. They bring all this cachet. It's kind of an exclusive, if you will. So there's an example of non-commodity. And I could see the Wall Street Journal saying, well, we got so-and-so writing for us. They're a big name, or we're going to interview so-and-so in this upcoming piece. Wall Street Journal can do investigative journalism. So for instance, let's say there's a scandal. They can go, old school, like they dug in, they found all these sources, they tied it all together, they solved the case. Now they're publishing to expose to the world, some type of political expose, environmental, economic. Again, that's kind of non-commodity content. But for folks like you and I, there has to be an answer. The fact that we're in a live stream right now and it's Friday, I'm having a hard time coming up with ideas of what that would be like, say, in my instance. Essays, position pieces, philosophy pieces, the thing with those, they're just not going to show up in the search. So again, I think Wall Street's in an interesting, unique position. They can do because they're published, they're a periodical, they're coming out every day. So they can hit the day's news, they can do exposés, they can interview high-profile people, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my thought. Derek says, are reviews and opinions considered non-commodity content? Yeah, I'm thinking so, because the perspective is unique for a specific situation. Asmongold is the GOAT. He is, isn't he? He's funny. He creeps me out just because he's got the missing tooth and the long fingernails. I believe in personal grooming. My office is a little messy. You can see here, I've been jarring tobacco, so you can cellar tobacco. Essentially, you can buy tobacco, and then you can cellar it. Certain kinds of tobacco. So this is Peter Stokkebye Luxury Navy Flake. This is a Virginia Perique vapor with a tiny bit of rum casing. If you let this sit for a few years, the flavor, because it'll get more complex and sweeter and so on. So my office is a little bit messy. Even if I move the camera around, you'd see there's some piles of papers. It's a working office. Asmongold is brilliant. I love that guy. I love watching his stuff. I watch the clips. I don't watch his live stream. But at the same time, bro, fix your teeth, cut your fingernails. He just looks filthy. I think he's got a great heart, but he looks filthy, which is just kind of makes this old man kind of laugh. Is the Logitech MX Master 4 the best productivity mouse for gamers? Yeah, so that kind of review, I would say, look, I'm not the expert on this, but as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, I think you're borderline commodity, funny enough, only because I think, okay, if MKHB, am I saying that right? Yeah, MKHB, if he does a review, Now he's lost some credibility because he's done a little corporate stuff where people are like, oh, you can't trust him. There's some controversy there. But I think he's great. I think he's great. If you bring something unique to the table in your reviews, it's entertaining, you've got insights, you're not afraid to tell the truth, like it's hard hitting, then I think that's non-commodity. So you got to bring some of you, because you're not a commodity, you're unique. If you're just like, today we're going to review the blind, it's got this specification, MKBHD, thank you so much. I knew I was missing a letter and I had them all discombobulated. I had the M and the K and the B. MKBHD, I love him. And I love him too, his like video quality, beautiful. And he does a good job. And he makes it seem so easy. But I think, he's going to have a huge following. He's not commoditized, even though he's looking at commodity things. But if you're just doing a basic review or you're writing an article on a website, we're comparing these 3 mouses to see which one's the best one for gaming. Unless you've got some unique thing that you bring to that review, AI's taken over that. And I've done this, so, go back to tobacco. So I've got a folder on ChatGPT about smoking. And I'll ask it like, hey, I like GLP's Union Square. So GLP's is the maker, the blender. I like his Union Square Virginia. It's a straight Virginia, no aromatics, no nothing. I like it a lot. What else can you recommend? And he'll say, well, if you like peas and you want to expand your Virginia repertoire, and then it'll give me a list to try. And then I can say, well, how does this one match up against that one? I'm kind of looking for this type of experience. So I'm not even going to Google. I'm just using AI. I'm not even going to reviews. My wife and I, so we got a boat a year ago. We live in Charleston. There's water everywhere. Neighbors down the street were upgrading, and they're like, and I had told them, if you ever want to sell this little boat, it's 17-foot boat. It's beautiful. Let me know. And they gave it to me for a great deal. We bought the boat. And my wife wants to try fishing. Now, I grew up fishing, but my wife wants to try fishing. And it's saltwater, brackish water, because we have rivers, marsh, ocean, the harbor, and we got all kinds of water. And so I know a lot of freshwater fishing tackle gear, but I thought for her birthday in May, I'm going to get her own fishing rig. I went to ChatGPT. And I got it there. Let's see. So I'm not even doing reviews at that point. I'm just going to ChatGPT asking for help. Got any pics of the boat? Let me see if I can. So we'll turn this into like, let me see if I can find. Let me see. I'm looking at my phone, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to send. If I can find the pictures on my phone, I will send it. Now, we took a cruise last year, and so it's sent. I just like searched my photos for boat, and it's sending me all kinds of photos of boats. Let's see here. That is one photo of it. It's not the best. Bear with me. This is great radio, ladies and gentlemen. I just had to airdrop it to my computer. And then, okay, that's good. Let me find one more, because if I can find one more, then we can, I'll show you another one. In the water, airdrop, Michael's, there we go. Okay, I'll bring it up in just half a second here. Let's get this over here. We're just going to open those two. This is how old men do it. We say what we're doing when we're on the computer. I'm not going to push this button, then I'm going to push that button. All right, let's cut over here. So this is the boat sitting in my neighbor's yard. It's a little 17.5-foot Aquasport with a Yamaha 115. And then here it is at my marina, docked up. That's the Ashley River. It's about 10. Well, I live within walking distance of the Ashley River, but the marina that we keep it at is about 10 minutes from our house. So there it is, fueled up, docked, and ready to go. And look at that water. Can you look at that water? It is like, I look at that and my heart is just like, oh, dude, this is what life is all about. But yeah, that's Uncle Mike's boat. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, Derek. All right, folks, what do we got here? We're about 1:15 in the afternoon. This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to doing this every week as we're able. It's the first time I've done a live stream in a long time. I did an impromptu one 2-3 nights ago over the weekend. But it's really good to be on with all y'all. Thank you for joining me today. Do me a favor, like and subscribe and all that great stuff. Leave a comment. I don't know, do all the things. Send checks, money orders, Venmo me. Seriously though, love you guys. I appreciate you joining me. Looking forward to the next one. Hope you guys have a great, great weekend, and I will catch you soon. Cheers.